What happens when water is exposed to EMF, or wireless radiation? Here's something you may not know. Water is conscious, and it responds vibrationally to whatever it is exposed to. At Omnia, we've done an experiment where we froze and photographed 3 samples of water. Water which was not exposed to EMF radiation, the baseline, looked like this. Water which was exposed to an EMF field, a 5G radiation field in fact, looked like this. And water which was exposed to EMF that is balanced by the Omnia radiation balancer looked like this. See the difference? Remember, your body is 70% water. And here's a special offer for the Journey to Truth crowd. Just enter the word truth in caps at the checkout for your 10% discount.
But, it's like the OSS. The OSS is still part of the CIA, I've heard. They never get rid of anything. So whenever they said, oh, that department's gone, I wonder about that. Because the Pentagon has an alarming habit of keeping departments. They just sort of rename them, reshuffle them, and then they put them in hiding. And I don't know exactly why you need so many. Obviously, this is a case of runaround and obfuscation and imagine calling the Pentagon as a concerned citizen. Oh, I saw a UFO and an alien was rummaging through my fridge, and they're like, oh, you need to call the Arrow, all domain. Oh no, you need to call the UAP task force. No, there's 5 guys sitting, smoking, drinking beer and coffee. Not doing much of anything except answering a phone saying, well, we'll put you on to the, UAITPZW.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
it's
they
so
just
obvious.
It is.
And they just rebrand it basically.
Right. Kind of like how they said MK Ultra ended in the 70s. It just lasted like 5 years and then
now it's Project Psychedelic Mushroom.
Totally didn't keep continuing on just under a different name or secretly at all. Right.
Well, let me do a brief little intro here and then we'll just jump into this and now we'll have some fun. So welcome back, guys. Don't forget to grab a ticket to our conference in Grafton, Illinois, May 22nd through the 25th. It's going to be a lot of fun. JourneyToTruthCon.com. You can get those tickets below. $344 for the 4-day pass. Meal plan is $250, optional if you want that. And a live stream ticket is $99. That does include a replay for 6 months. Come hang out with us. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're really looking forward to seeing you guys out there. On-site lodging is sold out, but there is camping on-site available, nearby hotels and Airbnbs. So we look forward to that. Tonight, we are joined by John Warner IV. Welcome back to the show, John. We had you on about 2 years ago.
About 1 year ago.
About 1 year ago. And we got into a lot of stuff. You just recently wrote an open letter to the Elizondo, Chris Mellon task force, and he kind of just laid it all out and said it like it is. So I'd really like to break down that letter and go through that and kind of let people know what's really going on with disclosure right now. And because obviously I think it's just an extension of the cover up and you can get into some of that. But before that, if you want, maybe you can let our audience know who might not have seen the first episode, kind of who you are and how you got into this briefly.
Oh man. Please go to Dark Journalist and watch my 4 episodes. That'll explain everything. But basically, I'll start with my grandfather. I'm from the Mellon banking family. Paul Mellon, my grandfather, was an OSS Army officer in World War II. He worked with Allen Dulles on Project Paperclip, and he worked under General Patton. And my father was Secretary of the Navy and a U.S. Senator for 30 years. And I grew up traveling the world with my father, carrying his briefcase, and sat in on some interesting meetings with the Navy and other branches, and got to know a lot of politicians and presidents and queens, and met a lot of royalty, and a lot of nefarious people as well. And right around 1993 or 4, I showed the Majestic 12 files to my father. I was sort of a UFO enthusiast at the time, but not really active doing much except maybe reading a book or two a year. But somebody sent those to me back when I was a racing driver. I was in California and I raced with this guy. He's like, hey, my father worked for Lockheed Martin and some others. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Aren't they building UFOs? I don't know where I got that, but I saw it somewhere. And he said, yeah, my father's involved. Let me send you some documents. And those were the Majestic 12 files. And they were fairly new back in 93. And I was 31 years old. So I was pretty naive, and I looked at them and I said, well, I'm going to show them to Dad. And my friend said, you should, because he's chairman of the Armed Services Committee. He sat on the Select Intel Committee. And oh boy, he and I went back and forth, and he cracked on them eventually. So that's a brief summary of where I got into this. I got to know Stephen Greer, 20 years ago, and some other people. He had mentioned my father in one of his podcasts or two, because he's a Virginian as well. So I kind of fell into all this. I'm a historian and a writer, and I'm a World War II historian, but I understand all of history. And it started to make more and more sense to me. Lo and behold.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you guys missed the first episode, I highly recommend checking that out if you want a little more background on what he was involved in and what he saw growing up. But as far as your open letter that you wrote, let's just jump right in head first and just kind of.
I have a question.
Sure.
So for your conference in May, is it May?
Yes.
Yeah.
So do CIA and NSA and National Reconnaissance Office people, do they get a discount?
No,
they're showing
absolutely
up.
not.
They
have to pay more, a lot more.
They're showing up.
They showed up last year, and we actually
potentially they were at least from a podcast, if not also that.
But I think they were low-level agents, is what I personally think.
There were things that indicated very strong.
They interviewed me, and in the interview at the conference, they interviewed me, and they asked me, "Do feds ever show up at these type of events? Do you guys ever play the game Spot the Fed? What do you do if you see somebody here is like infiltrating?" Like they were asking me all these weird questions, and I was just like, okay, I see what's going on here. But so
they don't need to work for them.
No, they don't need a job offer. They don't need a discount. They just kind of sneak in.
Well, how they got in the first place is they posed as a media company that was interested in filming like a documentary. And we just believed them. We didn't do enough vetting, and we were just like, "Oh, cool," and we let them in as a media. There's two guys, and then they were just acting so weird, and we were just getting these off vibes the whole time, and we're like, something's not right with these guys, and they were asking these weird questions constantly, and then he, like what he just said, and then lo and behold, we find out they're two guys from this like anti-conspiracy podcast called QAnon Anonymous, and they did a whole episode on our conference,
like a hit piece,
like just bashing it and laughing at it, and
right.
But we kicked them out after a couple of days.
That means you're over the target. You're getting flack.
Right.
Yeah, like a B-17.
Right.
But we kicked them out like halfway through because they were like filming right in people's faces and just acting very
just getting a number of complaints about them. Yeah,
everyone was complaining about them. Yeah,
but there's no doubt that those type of agencies do show up at conferences. Yeah,
it's interesting because some of my retired spook friends, like ONI, they asked me, said, "Are you going to this thing in the Midwest?" And I said, last year, I said no, but maybe the next one. So they knew about it, and these guys are retired, and they don't. They're not active like you and I are, you guys, but they heard about it.
Interesting.
So I found that interesting. I was like, how'd you hear about it? And they're like, oh, somebody told us, and we've got probably, they sent some of their, people, once intel, always intel.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah.
No, that's good to know. And I suspected something like that would happen. This year is not strictly secret space program, so we're not drawing as much attention, I don't think. But regardless,
but there's still a lot of, Tony's returning,
yeah,
still, and then there's still a lot of other info that is You know, they don't really want people believing,
Right.
let's just say.
Well, John, help paint a picture for us. What's going on right now with this disclosure?
Holy shit. Your guess is as good as mine. Everyone, I track my cousin Chris Mellon, and I track Elizondo, and I track Gary Nolan, and all these people. Chris Mellon was at the Barcelona conference. He talked to Linda Moulton Howe about nothing really, not much. I'm a big fan of Linda's. I've been following her since my mother gave me her book, and when I was 18. Alien Harvest.
She's been around a long time. Yeah.
I've heard from certain people that she was warned not to cover the human mutilations in her books.
Really?
Just the animal ones. So that's what I heard. I don't know. I understand, a lot of the old guard, Richard Dolan and others, they're sort of the old guard. They've been around since the 90s, and Linda, the 80s, early 80s.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Why they're going to this other side? I mean, I understand that there needs to be some cooperation, but so far they've only done lies by omission and shell games and nothing burgers, and they're not being, other than bringing the topic alive for the last 5 years or 6 years, since 2017, the Nimitz thing. They've done precious little, and it's all hot air and run around, and they talk, and they have softball hosts, and people interview them, and it's softball questions. I mean, come on, Gary Nolan and Tucker Carlson got up there and did an interview, and they both giggled about the subject, the UFO issue. I mean, that's just childish. They're 5-year-olds. I mean, I'm not kidding. And so why these senior people in the disclosure movement are crossing the aisle and shaking hands? What do they expect to get out of that? More attention? It's the wrong move. And they're never going to give an interview to someone who's hardball.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine?
They don't want that.
Greer or Daniel List or you guys or anybody out there, Carrie Cassidy? Oh shit! No. They're not going to give an interview. They're not going to put themselves in that position. Chris will never mention me because that would be giving me validation. But he can't. Right. I know he's read this letter.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, let's get into that.
I sent it I'm a part of a physics forum. I'm not a physicist, but I understand basic physics and try to understand nonlinear physics. Heisenberg, Gerlach, Hahn, Planck. These German guys that were doing nonlinear stuff back in the day. But, I sent this out, and I sent a link on Twitter, and I sent it out, for anyone who wants to read it. And if you guys want to put a link to it, that's fine. Links to my website. I'm just going to, it's written for medium level to low level knowledge folks. I mean, these guys aren't out there, Jack Sarfati, and there's Eric Davis, there's Ron Pandolfi, there's CIA people, there's Elizondo, there's you name it. They're all in this forum. Whether they read a lot of it or just glance at it, I don't know. But I sent it out, and a few people liked it, and it's just I kept it reasonable, because if you start banning about Nakwaffen and Draco reptilians and all this stuff, man, you're just going to get thrown in the loony bin. There's the bin of people in the loony bin, and then there's everyone else arguing that it's not true. And this brings up a point I'm sure people understand, but I'm going to reiterate it. And that is, what you guys cover is the minority of the disclosure movement. The rest of the people, and people like these scientists and everybody, they are grasping with all their strength what's left of their old reality. Yeah. And that hard wood floor that I always keep talking about. They're putting more planks, they're polishing it, reinforce it, because, here I come with an axe, and they don't like that at all. And I can gauge, like, Twitter's mostly useless, but there's a few people on there that are interesting. And you can gauge interest. If you do something secret space program, you get like 5 likes, what you post. And then you post something softball that's just either funny or, in agreement with the UAP task force agenda. And it's like, and so you can gauge that. I mean, Twitter
Right.
is not friendly towards the SSP narrative.
No, I noticed that too. The kind of like surface level UFO nuts and bolts UFO community it's huge on Twitter.
Joe
But then,
Blow,
like
Joe Blow
our-
UFO, you know,
right,
UAP Sally,
and everybody's retweeting Lou Elizondo and
a million times.
Chris Mellon, and
Well, they have algorithms and bots and AI probably to do that.
right.
Because one guy told me a long time ago, he said, "You realize the argument you're having with this person, they're really just an algorithm or a bot." It's not
Right.
real.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, no wonder they can't spell.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very true. That's very true.
It's very true.
Um,
There are a lot of bots.
So I'm sure you're aware of the $858 billion defense bill that was just signed by Biden recently that kind of provided like whistleblower protection, and it kind of gave the military the green light to start disclosing stuff. And Chris Mellon actually, chimed in on this, and he said this is arguably the biggest news that mainstream media won't cover. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because within that bill also mandates now it's finally official that all military personnel have to get vaccinated. And that wasn't official until Biden signed that. So that's interesting too. They snuck that in.
Yeah, it's a common political tactic on the Hill, senators and congressmen working with the Pentagon and everything. They slip things into bills. If they pass a bill, there's all kinds of stuff in there. You got to go really dig it out. It's hard to find sometimes. My dad says there's stuff, he used to say, there was stuff in there you'll never find because it's not privy for the public. It's the classified sections of Bill 126. And so at one hand, Chris Mellon says, and everyone else said, these idiot congressmen and senators who are all bought and paid for, folks. I mean, my dad told me that long ago. Corporations and big banks, banking families like mine, they own politicians. They do.
Oh, yeah.
My dad had a lot of help getting elected. There's no secret. So, from my mother's side of the family. So, you're not going to get to see the good parts of certain bills. And the other thing is, it's this bill that passed. I think they slipped in there. Yes, there's whistleblower protection. I'd like to read the fine print on that.
Yeah.
And good luck finding it, but I'd like to get a copy of it. And then I think they maybe slipped in some legislation, or they're preparing to, is to crack down on civilian researchers and make it a crime.
Oh.
Now that's fascist.
Make what a crime exactly?
Civilian UFO research. Non-official research.
How do you police that?
Well, that's a good question. You really can't. But my guess is they're trying to get rid of people like Greer and some others that have come forward with a lot of stuff. And, they're trying, moving forward, they want to own the narrative.
Right.
It's
all about controlling the narrative.
Right. So back in the 70s and 60s, when I was growing up, the Project Blue Book people and others on Capitol Hill, they cobbled together a program like Project Blue Book that gives the idea that they're looking into these UFO sightings and cases and abductions and everything, but they're going around to people, threatening people, covering it up, paying them off.
They're covering it
up. Happened. This is just an huge expansion of that idea, but they're getting Congress more involved because more and more people are seeing things in the sky, and they hear about abductions, and people are getting scared. And I've had certain people around town, what do you make of this? And I'm like, well, you don't want to know from me because it looks pretty dark on a lot of areas. And they're like, oh no. I thought the aliens were friendly. And I said, well, most of them are probably, but not all. And the ones that are working with the Pentagon and the corporations, they're definitely not the nice ones. Yeah. To my knowledge, maybe there are some now. Whatever impetus is pushing this UAP task force and Chris Mellon and everybody, all those people, Travis Taylor, Ross Coulthard, all of a sudden he's a UFO expert.
Yeah.
Why? Right. It's been on 60 Minutes and he's a journalist.
Well,
he doesn't know jack shit. Where was he 30 years ago? Nowhere.
Right.
But all these are approved people.
Tom DeLonge is an expert. Come on.
And what's his name? Chris Geritano.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah.
he produced a few documentaries, including the Montauk Chronicles. But I was talking with him privately one time, and he told me that they wanted him to do a UFO program, and they said, "Hey, you want to do this show and play a UFO expert?" And he was like, "But I'm not a UFO expert." And they're like, "It doesn't matter." Like, but this was the like Travel Channel or something like that,
Yeah.
and they don't care. They just appoint people who would be a good fit for that role.
Right.
Right.
It's like any corporation, they need to hire somebody to make the board look good.
Mhm.
Right.
But they don't know anything about the corporation or the company. But hey, we have this scientist, Travis Taylor. He's had History Channel exposure. He's fairly well known. I like Travis Taylor. I think he's funny. I think he's down to earth and nuts and bolts like me. But man, either he's very naive about what he's getting into, or they're just paying him enough money that he doesn't care.
Right. Right.
Well, and what's happening is they're trying to erase the UFO history that we do have, that we do know, by giving us these nothing burgers and these reports that kind of lead you nowhere, so they can, like you said, maintain control of that narrative. And then when we do get old information released, like some of the JFK information, how he was in talks with MJ-12 and how he was briefed on the UFO program, and the CIA was involved in in killing him and his assassination, that no one blinks, no one bats an eye. Like, it seems like it just gets swept under the rug and we just keep going on.
Because the Pentagon and Congress and the UAP task force people, they know who their audience is, and it's not us.
No,
it's the general public. And sadly, the general public is ignorant and uninterested.
Right.
And they have more pressing worries in life, work, job, money, family, issues, health, than to deal with a UFO issue, which is just, most people think is still a joke.
Except what they don't realize is the technology involved in all this stuff is being hid. Like, we have it and it's being hidden from us because it would destroy the gas, coal, and oil and the money system that we have. That's all the bullshit systems we have that's keeping us enslaved. It would completely make those obsolete. So they can't ever they're like, oh, we can never let this get out, or let people believe that, understand that we are hiding this, that we do have this, is the last thing they want. So like the threat, like, we can talk about this all day and they don't care, but is the second too many people start paying attention and being like, wait a second, there's something here. That's the threat. Is it's all psychological. It's all mental. They don't want people believing. They want people at most thinking, oh yeah, there's stuff going on in the skies, but we don't know what they are, or most of it's just ours, but it's secret military and whatever. Like, but they'll keep it at that surface level, keep it at arm's length, keep the questions going.
They don't have to work. They don't have to work very hard.
No, they really don't.
Chris Mellon just has to do one thing a month, and then he's back on his yacht and he's at the Rolling Rock Club and having a martini. It's like, I don't hate the guy. He has a wonderful family. He's a nice guy. I'd go up there and have a martini with him and chit chat about yachts. But the last time I saw him at our family reunion, I brought up the UFO issue, and he was furious. He said, "You do not talk shop in a family reunion."
Right. Yeah.
Now, next time I go, I'm going to roll up there in a patent tank with horns and, huge banners, UFO, space suit, but it's like, most people think, these elite committee of 300 families, whatever you want to call them in America, they think, they're all in on it. Nah, it's a 10%, 5%, 10% of those families. You're talking about a couple thousand people, maybe at most, who works like Chris Mellon in the deep state and military intelligence, who know a thing or two, at whatever level they're at. Clearances are many. Legion. You don't have cosmic aid plus clearance. You don't know shit. Yeah, that UFOs were back engineering shit, but that's it.
Right.
That's it.
That's
and
it.
So,
yeah.
Trust me, if these families knew the truth, and the ones that do probably are hiding and very scared. I know I have a cousin. She understands some of this stuff, but boy, she's just like, man, my life is complicated enough. And
well, there's blackmail involved too, and a lot of people.
Yeah, there's all kinds of
So, what are your thoughts on the CIA's involvement in this cover up and with the SSP? I think the CIA actually helps the SSP operate, and there's a lot of disinfo agents that work for the CIA that kind of maintain that narrative. I'd like to get your opinion on that.
Well, I can tell you, let's do the history of it. So the OSS was in World War II under Wild Bill Donovan. That's where my grandfather worked. And so he and Alan Dulles were on the cutting edge, hiring ex-Nazis and all their scientists, and they knew all about the UFO file. The Foo Fighters back in World War II. That's where the band got their name, folks, is World War II. All sides of the conflict were seeing these bright balls of plasma and discs. They were craning discs. I've been told in the Navy, one guy, an officer retired, told me they were craning spaceships out of the water in the Coral Sea in 1944 while the Japanese are bombing and strafing them. So, I mean, that's how important this is. The U.S. Navy has always had the lion's share of the technology. You go back to the Civil War, the ironclads, CSS Virginia and the Monitor, they were very high tech for the day. So the Navy has always had the high tech. Now, the OSS turned into the CIA. Now, they had mystics like my grandfather and Carl Jung and some others to help understand the metaphysical side of this UFO issue because, they realized the Germans were way ahead and everything. So the CIA was created in 1947, I believe.
Same time as
NSA was created in right around 1952 for the express purpose of covering nothing but the UFO related issues. And that's where people, fixate on the CIA. No, the NSA was created on purpose to deal with this issue. The CIA does other stuff, overthrow foreign countries and whatever, skullduggery everywhere. But no, the NSA, and I've got my stepson works for the NSA. He won't hear anything I have to say about it, but I'm like, go to the lower levels and work with the tall gray guys. Yeah, your pay will go up and your clearance will go up. And he's like, no, I don't believe that. So, I mean, people working at the NSA with clearance, he's got a high clearance. He doesn't believe any of this shit.
Yeah.
What do you think is going on with my cousin and everything? He's like, I don't know. And he laughs. And he doesn't care. So it's people on the inside, the Pentagon and the CIA, the NSA, the NRO, the Marines, the Air Force, Navy, Space Force, who don't believe in any of this shit because they're not given a clearance.
Right.
People think, they are all in cahoots. It's like, no, it's an elite within, a minority elite within every branch of the service or the intel. The same thing with Congress.
Right.
There are a few senators who were briefed on a modicum of the UFO file, like my dad and others. But, case in point, there was a congressman, I forget his name, who in the last 6 months did an interview with someone. And the congressman said, I can't remember his name. And he said, I went to my fellow congressmen and senators and said, look, this UAP issue is serious. They're in our airspace. This could be, we should do this. And a senior senator put his arm around him and said, Joe, or whoever, we have more important things to worry about. Come help us with Bill 162 on the, corn crop.
More important than unknown craft that are operating in ways we aren't supposed to be possible in our airspace. Something's more important than that.
Right.
Well, it's the biggest issue in human history.
Right.
People think it's UFOs and aliens. It's like, no, it's our entire history. If you go back, I study the megalithic buildings. I've been doing this all my life. And you realize Atlantis and high civilizations before the Great Flood, obvious. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, that 12,500 years old. That suggests organized farming, government, spirituality, all organized. Who taught them that? Right. The narrative was we were in spears and buckskins. It's nonsense. And so history is a Swiss cheese. It's mostly, lies. Napoleon said it, a set of lies agreed upon by the winners of wars.
Right.
But when you put ET involvement, both positive and negative and everything in between, the strip mining, the Nazca lines, the megaliths, the pyramids, the Yucatan, they're finding more and more cities every day. It's incredible. You go down there and you go to the Temple of the Sun in Mexico and everything, and your jaw just hits the floor if you understand the history. But once you plug ET in it, most of those Swiss cheese holes go away. Exactly. And I've been arguing with, even alternative historians don't want to go there. They're like, oh no, there's some ETs a little bit, but no, it's mostly humans. I said, well, I agree. The human beings did that, but there's been many races of human beings, some smarter than the others. Yeah. There were high civilizations going on before the Great Flood, living not too far away from Neanderthal tribes, and left them alone.
Right.
Or primitive Americans, primitive humans, they left them alone, like we used to do. And now in the Amazon, the Yanomamo and the other tribes like that, they all have cell phones and T-shirts now and tennis shoes.
Right.
Last indigenous tribes who had the spirit, they want all that spirituality and shamanistic, higher realm contact, which they've been doing forever, to end. Now, they tried that with the Native American tribes, but they never really did it. At least, the very least, the genocide stopped and we gave them reservations. Now, some tribes were wiped off the map. But this war against the indigenous spirituality has been going on for, I don't know, you tell me, since the 30 Years' War, the 1500s?
Right.
Hundreds of years.
That was the Lutherans, the Hermeticists, Lutherans against the Church of Rome. Yeah. I wonder, they knew. They were Gnostics.
Right. Exactly. And going back to like the people involved in these programs that just don't believe it exists because they work for the program, and if it existed, they would know.
I would know.
I would know.
Well, I would know if that was real.
But now you just made me forget what I was going to say.
So it's what's going on now. I think more of the same. I mean, look at all these acronyms. You could take a screenshot of the list of acronyms from my letter, you put it up on, I mean, they're creating a new one. My ONI guy says, oh, there's a new one coming. And I said, well, I'm getting bored. There's so many of them. And believe me, they don't go away just because the Pentagon and the AARO, All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, what are they resolving? Not much. How cold the beer is. 42 degrees, that's not cold enough. So they're creating, they don't have websites. All they do is the Pentagon website issues a briefing under the heading of AARO or UAP Task Force. There's no information, no websites. Right. Now, maybe there will, but as of right now, there's none.
That's the interesting thing too. And I remember what I was going to say. These people they're just completely ignorant to what's really going on, and they're being used as pawns in an agenda that they're not even aware of.
Yeah. Most Pentagon, people, they might have been read in on a tiny bit, and it's like,
right.
The rest is above your pay grade.
It's need to know. They're told what they need to know to do their job, and that's it. It's compartmentalized. That's what people need to understand.
And
my dad taught me that back when I was in college. He's like, you need to understand how the military works. And I was asking, are UFO, what's going on with this UFO issue? I don't know. There was a sighting in Virginia back in the 80s, and he said, look, you need to understand that the people in those departments, sometimes they're not listed, and there's all kinds of security levels. You're never going to get any information from anyone. He always, in the early days, he tried to dissuade me, like the Majestic 12 files. He's like, don't go down that road. You're not going to find it. Just leave it alone. I said, no way. I'm not going to leave this alone.
Why?
Bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, back in the 90s, it was still dangerous to go digging.
Oh, yeah.
It really was. I didn't know that. But had I been in touch with Greer in 93, he would have told me to be damn careful what you do. Now, he's still alive, so somebody
he's still alive.
Right.
Somebody
and
protected him.
Well, so you were talking about there's no websites, right, for these.
Not the last time I checked was last week. No.
Well, this is how the secrecy. This is how they maintain the secrecy for a lot of these programs, these clandestine, black budget, shadow government programs. There is no paper trail intentionally. No. It's the same as, like, think of the CIA when they're on mission, right? When they receive an order on a throwaway cell phone, they get the order. The cell phone goes into the river. They carry out their task. The same thing's going on with the secret space program. In my opinion, I don't think there is a large paper trail for any of it for that reason. So even if somebody were to dig or things were to be exposed, there's nothing there. There's no documents.
And it's been like that for a couple hundred years that, there were smart enough intelligence services. And so, this gets to a point that I made in another interview, and I'll list it here, is, a lot of people on Twitter and a lot of my friends and all kinds of people, they say, show me something, show me some proof of all this crap, this UFO issue and the military being involved. And, they know something's going on because there's the UAP thing. But, I think most people believe, and I think it's true, that Tic Tacs and other things, those are Lockheed Martin and Grumman and, General Dynamics. Those are our stuff, because they need plausible deniability to fall back on. And so I began thinking, what there's the mass of circumstantial evidence, the millions of civilian pilot, literally millions of reports, military reports. Chris Mellon makes a big deal of that. Oh, damn you, Pentagon, you need to give military people more leeway to, it's all about hardware and sightings. That's not important. It's the politics. It's the dirty deals. It's, what deals have we made with ET? Well, we've all heard from the SSP folks, that could be what they're hiding. They don't care about sightings, or I saw a little gray alien in my closet. They can give a shit. What they're doing is saying, eventually within 10 years, they'll be like, sure, we work with some ETs. They're very nice people. We're working on some projects. We'll get back to you on, someday. And have a nice day. Go back to work, go back to school, and shut the fuck up. Stop bothering us, and go talk to the UAP task force, which will give you a runaround to all the other departments. And so that's what they're doing. It's obvious to anyone in DC who understands intelligence in the military. I mean, all my friends, they'd laugh. They're doing this again. Like I said, didn't they do that in 1976? And they're like, yeah, but no one remembers. They've been doing the same tactics over and over, and that's going to come back to bite them, I think. So, proof. And I gave this a lot of thought, and I said to someone, look, I don't know anything 100% sure. I can give you probabilities, but I don't know. But let me tell you something. The human race is very creative. We're mostly good people. We're loving, and there's a few bad apples, duality. What are you going to do? However, if you look at the big picture of history, what never changes? Now, with all this creativity and, there's some minor changes, civil rights, women's lib, these are positive things that happen, little changes, but the fundamentals of history never, ever change. Number one, the elite few rule over the many. These royals and other people, rich families like mine and, powerful people, they rule in secret. I've studied it 9 Ways to Sunday for decades. There's no other explanation. They rule. So that's number one. Number two, slavery. It's been with us since the get-go, since the Great Flood anyway. And there are accounts of Atlantis that say, well, the regressive sons of Belial, started making chimeras and genetic modifications to make slaves. That's very selfish and service to self, centaurs and, bullheaded men, these kind of things that are probably going on in the programs and out in space. It's not a big deal. And so slavery never goes away. You've got debt slavery, you got sexual slavery, you've got human trafficking. That never goes away. You go to a market in the Middle East, in a warehouse in the desert, and you can buy anything you want, including a used UFO, probably, if you have enough money.
Yeah.
Somebody told me that you can buy a low-level spacecraft from the Russians or somebody for $2 million.
Wow. Really?
Now, in the rich people world, that's a bargain.
Yeah.
Now, it may only go to the moon and the solar system. I don't know how you get permissions to leave the atmosphere or whatever, but you can use it in the Earth's atmosphere. You can go to China from Russia in 2 minutes. Boom. So, these are the kind of weird things that are going on, most likely. So slavery, number two. Number three, always had religions. New ones crop up every day. I'm sorry for people who put their eggs in one basket with religion, but it's obvious that's been our biggest mind control vehicle since the Great Flood. Spirituality be damned, Gnosticism be damned. There were the Templars and the Teutons and the Cathars and the Gnostics who knew better, but everyone else, religion. So that never changes. Even if the Vatican says, "Oh, we love ET, we're going to make them Catholics and everything," that's all bullshit. That's number three. That never changes, no matter what people do. Now, religion, in Europe, it's falling off. People are losing faith. They're tired of the lies. With everything, and so that's a big one. And I should write these down because I forget them. But the other big one is, money.
Yep.
Money is slavery. I don't care if you're Koch brother billionaire. I know these guys, I have freedom. You don't have real freedom. Yeah, you got a private jet and a yacht and whatever. You can give millions away and get political favors, but you're still a slave. You're a slave because there's always somebody above you. Right. And even the Queen of England probably has somebody, you and I probably know who, leaning on her before she died. And now, got King Charles, a dumber monarch I know not,
and try to use that money to actually free humanity or do things that will make the system obsolete, like build free energy devices, build a craft, do these. And
they do in secret for themselves.
Right. But you try to use your wealth to do these things, you will get shut down immediately by the system. Because the money it's still within the system and controlled by the central bank.
You have to be on the approved list.
Right.
And very few people are.
Right.
Just because you have a lot of money like Bezos or the Facebook kid or even Musk, boy, do I get shit when I attack Musk on Twitter. It's nothing but an Elon Musk love fest, blind love fest. But, he's a military contractor. I was right about that.
Is there somebody... Is there somebody there with you?
Yeah, my wife is somewhere.
Oh, okay. I just saw someone walk by and look.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not an interdimensional. It might be
right.
Jinn or an Archon. Yeah, they're usually hanging out.
Right.
Into my liquor closet.
Well, it was real like a shadow figure. I was like, whoa, what was that?
Shadow being. They're all.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. So how? Go ahead.
I don't know. I lost my train of thought, but the fundamentals of history never change. Yeah, and then the last one is war and weapons development. Boy, that's what got me into history in the first place. All these wars. I wanted to know all about the weapons and the politics and Napoleonic Wars and everything when I was in high school and college. And it's like, wow, history is just going from one war to another. Yeah, this ship sailed around the world and this king did this for, whatever, but it's mostly wars.
Right.
And so these fundamentals of history never change. And I asked my friend, I said, who has the godlike, omnipotent power to keep this machine going with all this stuff and no change of those fundamentals? Now that's got to be ET, because these round tables of royals and politicians and big rich people, they don't get along. They fight like cats and dogs. I know that. My grandfather was on the CFR and the Jason Society. I think the Trilateral, but I'm trying to figure that out. I think he was in the Cosmos Club in Washington, D.C. I mean, these people don't get along. Yes, they let nations starve. Let's just let that African nation starve this year, and then we'll come in across in the World Wildlife Fund, and we'll give them some money in 5 years when half the population is dead.
Right.
But they don't get along.
Right. I've heard that.
The Koch brothers are on all these big foundations, and they were like, join us, this foundation. I said, no, it's not boring. I've been on a board before. I'm not going to do that. It's the person with the most money on the board gets their say. Right. They're in charge. And so I said, no, it's corrupt. And they're like, no. But, I said, do they argue a lot? And they're like, yeah. And I said, no, I've had enough of that. It doesn't get anything done. Of course, I didn't.
Well, there's like the warring families and in conflict within the families and within those realms like you're talking about. But they do get together in those meetings because they ultimately are working together, even though they dislike each other.
They have to.
Right. They understand they're still working for that. Like they can possibly, by working together, accelerate that one world order agenda. So they just kind of, make do with it, even though they don't really like the opposing.
No, and there's the rumors of the famous yearly meeting in England. I forget what city or where it is, where it's half ET, half human, and maybe some inner Earth folks for color. And and they get together and they're like, all right, this is it. And it goes down the chain of command. So they have to get along. It's like any other kind of board or anything on a corporation or so. You got to get along at the end of the day. You may argue about certain points and things like that. But at the end of the day, when somebody at the top gives an order, well, that's that. Now there's some wiggle room in negotiations. A lot of ET races, they love to negotiate, and contracts are big. That's where we get contract law and the contracts in corporations. We learned it from them. And that's big out in the universe.
Yeah.
You sign a contract, you're beholden to it. Better not break it, because that's a universal law. And of course, you can bend universal law, and they break it. Penny Bradley says they break it all the time, certain ET groups, because everyone has an agenda, and that makes sense.
Right.
Everyone's like, oh, I met these wonderful ETs and they're blue and they sent out the flower of life and, they gave me a crystal and everything was love and light. And so, okay, well, probably, but do they have a hidden agenda?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's like, oh, no, they're wonderful people. You've got to meet them. And it's like, oh, I'd meet them, but I'd use the law of discernment, which is a hermetic law. And, they might be 97% benevolent and they like us and, we like you guys, but we want to steal all your orchids from the Amazon and leave you none. It's something like that. It's kind of like not everyone's, 100% benevolent, and same, yin and yang, there's a little bit of light in the dark. You take the yin and yang symbol, black and white, if you spin it fast, what color do you get? Gray.
Yeah, there you go.
Everything is lighter gray or darker gray. People like simple black and white answers, and there's none.
Right.
This whole issue, everything is gray. Yes, some people wear very, very light gray hats. I presume Chris Mellon is sort of a medium gray, a little dark. And I'm a lighter gray hat. But I mean, no one's a saint, no one's a savior. It's just ridiculous. It's part of the reason the human race really, part of the big lesson to learn is that one of them, right? Because when we mature, when you get older, you learn some of that. Most cops are good, but there's the 15 to 20% that are on the take, or shoot somebody, for money or something like that. But most cops are good, but it's like perspective is important, everything like that. Right. You interview somebody who's been beaten up by a cop and they hate cops, but then those same cops are, saving somebody's life with a bunch of firemen. The universe is all flexible. Reality is flexible. Everything is flexible, and everything is gray.
Right.
Light or dark thing. Nobody's perfect. It's, oh, God, source. He or she is pure light. And it's like, I wonder. I bet they owe a lot of people some poker money.
Right. Well, I always say that, like, there is no answer for anything. Like, you can make a list of possibilities, and the answer is always all of the above. Like, I don't think that there's nothing's clear cut, like you said, and that's very apparent. It's very apparent.
People don't like that. They don't like the flexibility of something. They like, everything hard, solid, solid, black or white. My dad was kind of like that. I'm like, hey, man, there's a lot of flexibility and grayness in here. Oh, hell no.
Right. And it's always
answers.
It's always about who benefits from, like, the UFO disclosure, like who benefits from what they're doing right now. Like, obviously we talked about that earlier, but there's always an agenda behind every move that's made.
They're doing this whole UAP thing, the whole of it, because they have to. Who's on the inside pushing for that? That's anyone's guess. Some lighter gray, medium to lighter gray hats are like, enough is enough. The internet's changed everything the last 30 years. People are seeing more and more shit in the sky. Pilots are seeing stuff. I know Navy personnel are really pissed off. They're like, we see them all the time, but we're supposed to report them as naval flares. I was on the USS Enterprise in 1995 for a couple of nights, and it's an aircraft carrier. And we saw in the distance off South Carolina in the east, all these orange lights that, they were in formation. Then one zipped away, and then they blipped out. And they said, the officer on the deck said to all the enlisted people, it's just naval flares. Everyone back to work. And the chief petty officer, some guys passed me and my ONI friend who was with me, and they said, no, they always say that. We know what the fuck they are.
Right.
And they're getting tired. They're getting tired. The service personnel, all branches, maybe not the Space Force, but all branches, they're getting tired of being treated like children, not given the proper clearances or information. They believe in national security and the Constitution, most, not all. But the Navy believes in Constitution, Marines.
Yeah.
They're not beholden to a commander-in-chief. They're beholden to the Constitution, which represents, in theory, the American people.
Right.
But we live in a corrupt republic.
Let's talk about the Navy and the Space Force, because the Space Force recently took over all military satellite communications. I don't know if you recently saw that. And I don't know how true that is, but that's what was announced. And then what the Space Force also is allegedly working on a new space station that's going to be 3 times the size of the Empire State Building, and they're decommissioning the ISS in 2031. They're going to crash land it in the Pacific Ocean.
It's a piece of shit anyway.
Right.
Right.
The information about the new space station comes directly from somebody I know whose father is working on it, and this is real intel.
They'll say it's new, but they've had it up there for 20 years.
Right.
We got a space station. It's just like anything else up there. There's a ton of shit up there in orbit. Varying degrees of,
and then Space Force
orbit or high.
They seem to be at the forefront of all of this right now. And they even seem to be like an aerospace company as well, if they are in fact building a new space station.
Yeah. It's a confusing mess, but here's what I know, for whatever it's worth, because I'm not right about everything. There was something called Earth Defense Force, and it's been around for 30, 40 years. That, I think, was changed to U.S. Space Force. So we've always had it for, 40, 50 years. We've had, a presence in space as a defensive of the Earth, whether it's satellite or space stations. They've had space stations since the 50s, probably. And so that's that component. Naval Space Command, the NSC, it's one of those acronyms, that's based in Kwajalein Island and Diego Garcia. That much I know from my own eye sources. I've known that for, 25, 30 years. I didn't know the significance of it. Kwajalein, they launch things with chemical rockets and anti-gravity. It's in a position for privacy, but also there's an electromagnetic benefit of being in Kwajalein for getting stuff into orbit or beyond. What that benefit is electromagnetically, it has something to do with the Earth. And so that's all I know. Probably the same in Diego Garcia. Boy, if you want privacy, that's in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Obviously the SSP people mention that from time to time,
right?
Where the Germans come and resupply. That's logical to me. Under contract, they have contracts to resupply. That would be a great place to land. And whether you're cloaked, invisible, or whatever, that's easy to do. They were working on that in the 30s. It's my new book. I talk about it. Optical invisibility. You're changing. It has a time travel component to it, because in my book, my latest book, Sanity Was a Luxury, they're aboard a German anti-gravity airship, and the Varian brothers and Van Bush, the MIT Rad Lab, and John G. Trump is in there as a character. They cobble up a series of klystron radar tubes, and they say, we could bend light using scalar waves at microwave frequencies. This gets into the Eldridge and Project Rainbow stuff. But theoretically, I kind of pieced it together. I think they could have done it. They were working on it in the 30s. That's the word, under FDR and Tesla. And so what it does is it's out of phase. When you're looking at an aircraft from another aircraft, and then you shift the phase using scalar waves, and it becomes invisible because it's actually one step further out of time phase than you. So it's a little bit of time travel used for optical invisibility. I think that's kind of sort of how it worked, at least back then. Whether what they have today, who knows? But I kind of pieced that together. That was interesting to me. And of course, it worked, and it had limitations, but it worked.
Right.
So
yeah, and as far as the Navy's involvement in all this stuff, they seem to be
goes way back. Yeah, the diving bells, the Glomar Explorer. I drilled down. This is 6 months ago. I drilled down on the Glomar Explorer, which Howard Hughes and Hughes Aircraft was involved in, and lo and behold, there it was. My dad, as Undersecretary of the Navy in 1971, he was involved with the Underwater National Reconnaissance Office and the Glomar Explorer. Sure, it picked up a few Russian submarines. What else was it designed to pick up off the ocean floor?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm not sure what.
I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know that about Dad.
I'm not sure. I don't know about the you said Glomar Explorer?
Glomar Explorer, look it up. It's a big ship that's designed with 2 crane towers to lower a grappling, type of grappling device to the ocean bottom to pick up submarines and whatever else it could grasp onto.
Oh, you mentioned that in your letter, did you not?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I knew I heard it. I remember the first interview you were talking about that movie, The Final Countdown, how that was.
Yeah, that's weird.
I watched that movie and it's incredible. They're, talking about time travel and a practical formality and applying it to the military and the Navy. And you said that was a recruitment film. I noticed the U.S. Navy now is referring to the new Top Gun movie as like the #1 movie on their Twitter account. It's the first thing. Top Gun voted #1.
Top Gun Maverick.
Top Gun Maverick voted #1 by the Navy, blah, blah. And I'm wondering if that's also being used as a recruitment film as well.
Oh, sure. I mean, Hollywood's been neck and neck with Intel and the military services. I mean, look at 2001: Space Odyssey. I saw that when I was 6 years old in 1968 with my dad and my best friend. Imagine all the people joining NASA and the Air Force and some other secret, U.S. Navy space program was active even back then. That was showing us the secret space program. A lot of people believe that. I think so as well. Mm-hmm. They were showing us the truth, which they do on occasion. Now, of course, the Antarctica, they make silly movies like Iron Sky, and I think they're making a third one. They're terrible movies. Terrible.
But there's disclosure in it.
Sort of, because they're demonizing it. They're making it look ridiculous. Right. That to me and others, that's a red flag, because they're going it's not like 2001 or the Top Gun or whatever else. No, they're demonizing that, making it look childish and silly. The movies are made for children. Mm-hmm. And so they're telling some truth, probably, I think, but they're demonizing it as hard as they can. That's a red flag in my book.
Well, just like as soon as Trump announced the Space Force, the Netflix series came out, Space Force. It's a comedy that
makes terrible.
Right.
Makes fun of it. Yeah.
Right.
Like it's a joke. Yeah.
And he just disappeared. Magic.
It's freezing in here.
You're fine.
In the bunker, it's freezing here. I keep the humidity at 10%.
But you're exactly right, because Iron Sky and Starship Troopers is another one that really paint a picture of how the SSP operates and what's actually going on. But it's laughable. They do it under the guise of comedy.
Terrible.
Yeah.
In the 1990s, I was working in post-production television. I was a computer guy, a compositor, doing special effects work for movies and commercials and things like that. And I saw Starship Troopers being made on the computer, with the animation in those days. It was all soft image. And I was like, this is a weird movie. And then I watched, 10 minutes of it and I thought, oh, this is ridiculous. And now I'm like, I wonder they're really showing us some of the truth. They make it kind of silly, and they make it for young adults and 12-year-olds.
Right.
But under cosmic law, they're showing us the truth.
I agree. And I've heard from people like Daryl James and some other SSP people that the way they're depicted, wearing, I guess the Dark Fleet would be depicted, the long leather coats with the hat, the black leather coats with the hat. Yeah. Apparently that's exactly how they dressed. Yeah. And that, to me, like, that's a detail that you can't ignore. If that's really what these people are remembering, and that same detail shows up in a movie like Starship Troopers, that's a like subtle disclosure, but no one's ever going to connect those dots unless you really go down that rabbit hole.
You got to have a good knowledge of all this stuff, and the problem is, and this is what the U.S. government and the UAP folks, they know people can't. I mean, this has taken me 45 years of my life to piece together. I had my own. I came to this very slowly and skeptically, but I'm open-minded. I consider everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's why I'm friends with Penny Bradley and others. I want to listen, and I want to. And a lot of the stuff they say is it's very esoteric, but as far as German history, going back to the Romans trying to genocide the Germans, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have a good knowledge of history to understand that. But to ordinary citizens, it's going to sound like a bunch of complicated gobbledygook.
Right.
They know that, Chris Mellon and everybody, they know that. They know who their audience is. And I saw a document many, many decades ago, I don't know, and it said the average IQ of America is somewhere around 85.
Yikes.
It's the average. And I was like, this can't be true.
I believe that.
I don't believe this. This is a military doc. Someone showed it to me. And now, sadly, I've sort of come to terms with that. They know how to manipulate people. Oh, they don't even have to do any heavy lifting. It's so easy. And to demonize everyone in the disclosure movement as being still a bunch of tinfoil hats with, binoculars looking at UFOs in the sky and making up ghost stories about space. Right. Oh, they saw that Star Wars. Oh, they saw that the day the Earth stood still. And it's like, wow, there's a lot of sci-fi movies where, aliens are attacking us.
Right.
Post-apocalyptic
movies too.
There's a lot of disclosure in the original 1960s Star Trek series.
Oh yeah.
Now the story on that I've gotten from several sources, I pieced it together. Gene Roddenberry, who was a World War II pilot, he saw action. He was the real deal. His best friend was Leslie Stevens Jr., who was a Hollywood producer and did Battlestar Galactica in the 1970s. Guess who his father was? Admiral Leslie Stevens. And supposedly, he's the one who gave Gene Roddenberry, through his son, the information to put into the Star Trek series. There's word that it was a Navy-sponsored vehicle. The Navy wanted in the early 60s to start getting some of these concepts out to a very simplistic public. In the 1960s, it was barbaric times. Civil rights, it was grim. And so they were able to talk about all these issues, and slavery, cosmic slavery, racism, war, a lot of war in Star Trek, Klingons and everything like that. And who are the Klingons? Who are the Romulans? And who are the Vulcans? There's all these, concepts of logic, and they had episodes where the computer took over the whole enterprise. That's AI, failed. They were trying to warn us about a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. I urge people to go back and with this new knowledge that we're all talking about here, especially you guys, to go back and watch that with an eye. That Gene Roddenberry was, the story is, he was a member of the council. He was privy to the Council of Nine, nine ETs, at the E. Salin Institute in California. And, William Tompkins writes, Admiral Rico Boda, who was in charge of the Douglas aircraft, he's in my new book. He's a character. He and Leslie Stevens definitely knew each other.
Right.
I think from my research, it's hard to find anything on Boda. My father and I did 2 FOIA requests. The Navy gave us 1 page. height, weight, serial number, commander of San Diego Naval Air Station. It's on an island.
Well, most of that information comes from William Tompkins about Boda.
It all starts to piece together if you do your homework. But a lot of people read a few books and watch a few videos and freak out and say, "Oh, this can't be true."
Right.
And I don't blame them, but it's like it takes a lot of study.
And then we have to consider the disinfo agents that are sent in to muddy the waters.
Also that.
And I actually have a list of like the different levels of disinfo agents that I just think is really interesting to consider. They have agents of influence, the confusion agents, contract agents, deep cover agents, disinfo agents, notional agents, provocation agents, and spoon feeder agents.
Yeah.
And like,
that's
okay,
a lot of agents.
Right. And each one, there's a description that I could go through if you wanted, but each one has a description on how they operate and what their strategies are. And a lot of them I see being used within the disclosure of truth movement.
Right. And I'd like to think I have a pretty good level of discernment. I'm 60 years old, so I've been around. In my opinion, for whatever it's worth, the people that concern me the most in the whole disclosure arena is not Chris Mellon, Luis Elizondo, and Gary Nolan and Travis Taylor, all those guys. It's the guys, men and women, who are in the middle. Now, I'm going to give you an example. Jeremy Corbell is a big fan of Bob Lazar. I am too. I know people that knew, they say Lazar was legit.
Yeah.
People that I trust here, people not on the internet, military folks. But then Jeremy Corbell goes off the reservation and starts talking about softball things and gee whiz, I'm going to go on Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, which is all bullshit. The Ancient Aliens is some disclosure, and then they say the top of a pyramid turns into a UFO made out of solid gold and zooms up into space. That's stupid. And so they're telling you some truth, I think, and then they muck it all up by telling you ridiculous things. Well, what if ancient astronauts think this? And so Jeremy Corbell, I think, is a very dangerous person. Maybe he's just an idiot. But I wonder, because I think he's been trained to say, oh, Bob Lazar's okay. He's just talking about this. But then everything else he demonizes. And it's subtle.
Right.
It's very subtle. He's sort of this mid-level guy, but he gets a lot of public exposure. That's dangerous to me. That's a guy who, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think he's the kind of guy where they tapped him on the shoulder and said, do this for us or else. Or here's some money, either or both. Pretty strong.
That's exactly the vibe.
And he talks about Bob Lazar, like, yeah, Bob Lazar's great. And then everyone's like, all right. And then he goes up, talks about, how great Chris Mellon and all these other guys are.
Right.
And it's like, holy shit.
Right.
So he's saying some good stuff, and then he's saying a lot of tainted stuff. That's counterintelligence 101.
Exactly. That's how they operate. Exactly.
And
another example is Ross Coulthard, and they're an expert. But I'm disappointed in Richard Dolan, and I'm disappointed in Linda Moulton Howe for reaching across the aisle and doing a softball interview with Chris Mellon.
Right.
What the hell? That's not going to further anything.
Right.
Except their official.
A lot of it becomes entertainment, the storytelling, and the first one on that list, agent of influence, it says somebody who may be under mind control or ideologically motivated to use their positions of influence to mind control others. So we have to think about the mind control aspect of all this. Mm-hmm. And people in these positions might be under mind control. And we know this is possible. This is no secret.
Yeah. They may not be aware of what they're doing.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Why some people are more susceptible to MK Ultra mind control techniques. It's mostly electronic now. Why some are and other people, I would hope that the three of us are not.
Right.
We're talking about, we're talking smack, and we're not holding back. And others don't. I don't understand that part. Maybe some of the SSP folks can clarify how that works.
Right.
Maybe you have to be a little soft in the head to begin with, like Tom DeLonge. I'm sorry. Great musician or Freemason, whatever. I have friends who are Freemasons, and they're like, that guy's full of shit.
Well, and
these guys are real guys, and they're like, that guy's, he's a bobo.
He's the definition of a puppet being used,
or what they call useful idiot.
Useful idiot, right?
Unfortunately.
Same thing.
Well, somebody in his position, like, think about, like, they take advantage of your ego too, and like, hey, what if we make you the next UFO guy to the Stars Academy? Like, listen, how does this sound? To the Stars Academy, you get access to top secret classified information. You get to go on Joe Rogan's podcast. You should tell the world what happens with UFOs. Like, they present it to them.
Right. He was given information that's been floating around for 30 years.
Exactly.
I mean, Alex Collier has been talking about that stuff, and others, Greer and you name it. So what did Tom DeLonge do? He just regurgitated shit.
Right.
I'm sure his intention was good. By all accounts, he's a nice guy. I think they manipulated him out the yin yang.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And then he's like playing KG, and he goes on Joe Rogan. That's a softball host. Knapp, Joe Rogan, others. These softball hosts, and just sits there in his beanie and his hipster outfit and goes, yeah, man, it's all cool. No, it's not cool at all. This is frightening and horrifying.
Right.
Right. Tom DeLonge, Jeremy Corbell, there's a million of them.
Right.
Who, and they cater to most of the folks who are very, very starting to get very concerned about this whole UFO issue, ET issue. And they're starting to get scared, and they're reinforcing their pink, fluffy cloud of, that false floor of reality. They're helping them, pound new boards. Oh, don't worry, everything's going to be great.
Right.
Right.
Well, so I've seen it all my life. It's so obvious. Like, got all these philosophers and psychologists. I'm doing an interview with a bunch of Jungians, and they all believe that, my grandfather knew Carl Jung and his concept of the collective unconscious. And I think they're going to have me on, and they're going to say, isn't it all in everyone's mind? Mm-hmm. Don't we just co-create our reality? How do you explain that? Yes, part of that's true. We do co-create our reality, because that makes sense to me. But come on, it's not in billions of people. It's not in our heads. But see what they're doing. They're protecting their sanity. Right. This is why my new book is called "Sanity Was a Luxury." That's a quote from Ernst Schaefer of the Ahnenerbe SS, the archaeologists. And they're having this heated discussion about all the German technology and how it's going off the rails. This is my allied characters and the Germans. And they're like, we're really concerned. And they're like, this is insane. And he's like, sanity is a luxury. And we can't afford it right now.
Right.
Because everything has gone insane. So the problem with those concepts, trying to hide behind a philosopher or a psychologist, Jung was CIA. He was OSS, and then once CIA, always CIA. Right. And they're going to the a guy who wrote a book about flying saucers. I've read it. It's mostly disinformation. Well, don't worry, folks. It's all in your mind. Well, yeah, they might be real, but they're far away. Don't worry, it's all in your mind. That's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and there's more of this. People being chicken shit. I'm sorry, they're just cowards.
Telling you what to think about it rather than presenting information, letting you decide.
Yeah, well, they can't. Right. They don't have much of an argument now that the government's coming out saying, "Oh, these are strange UAPs." They can't. They're finding less. It's like having a mountain climber having a perch. All these perches are going away. They're going up an ice frozen waterfall, and they're running out of ice axes and things to cement their pathetic third dimensional 20th century reality, which is a little gone, folks.
Right.
And you nailed it. Exactly.
Another thing I see is we have all of a sudden these ex-Illuminati people coming out doing interviews saying that, oh, it's all virtual reality. These people are just remembering virtual reality.
Oh, SSP is all memory implants and virtual reality,
which is a little bit of the truth,
right? Some of it,
a little bit,
surrounded by a bodyguard of lies. That's what Winston Churchill said. Oh my God, the truth has to be protected with a huge bodyguard of lies. Mm. And so that's the way. That's an intel tactic. Chris Mellon goes out there and goes, oh, it's a mystery, and some of them might be alien. A little bit of truth. It's not a mystery, but the alien part. And then he goes, don't worry, it's probably the Chinese or the Russians. So they kind of tantalize you with a little bit of, think they're going to say something true, and then they fall back on their bullshit narrative.
Yeah.
You know, like a big fluffy mattress. Everything's fine. Here's a blankie.
Right.
Right.
Don't
Exactly.
worry, American people. Here's a cashmere blanket.
Right.
Firm, fuzzy.
Nothing to see here. Move
Right.
along.
The
Yep.
Have a rum
bullshit.
drink. You know, have a tiki rum drink.
Right. The bullshit narrative. That's what
Right.
I'm going to name this episode.
That's actually really good. It's
You know,
perfect.
and I don't blame people. I really, I mean, I could sound harsh sometimes, but you know, a lot of these people are my friends and family, you know, that I love dearly. But you know, we all got to start to grow up. I mean, all of us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, we're never going to stop learning. You know.
Well, they hope that we get so confused and lose hope, so we just throw in the towel and go back to working our 40-hour job and forget about it. That's what they want, and that's why the IQ is what you said it was, 80 at 85 or whatever.
I saw that, but you know, people can argue that all day long, but
you
sadly, I
can
think
you see those. You see those people go around and ask random people basic questions about history, about the presidents, and most people, like, they can't answer it. A lot of people can't. They don't know, you know, who the first president was. It's like the millennial generation. So it's like, okay, that's done by design. The distractions are put in place. So, you know, they don't.
Schools, movie, games, VR goggles, and the games, boy, those are dangerous.
Right.
You know, I see I have a step grandson, you know, and he's diddling away on these games. I mean, there's no way to get him off that. I mean, it's so designed to be addictive. And then the movies and the TV shows.
Yeah. TikTok, 10-second videos.
It's weird because, like on Netflix, Dark is talking to you about time travel. And they're alluding to Brookhaven Labs in Long Island, but it's set in Germany at this fake atomic plant. But they're giving you some truth. But boy, they made it so complicated and slow and German. And I mean, some of my friends asked me, "What the hell is Dark really about?" And I said, "You wouldn't believe it if I told you." You know, and then they're like, "What?" You know, they tell us bits of truth, but it is so convoluted. There are very few shows that really hit the nail on the head, if any. Right. I mean, I'm surprised Graham Hancock's show got on Netflix or whatever.
We were just talking. I am shocked that was allowed, but that, I don't know. To me, that gives me like, maybe there's some kind of like
shift,
good infiltration of Netflix or something happening here.
A little bit of hope, yeah.
Right.
A little bit.
And then the Gift show.
Yeah, there's it was filmed in Istanbul. It's called The Gift, and it's about Göbekli.
Oh yeah, very nice.
Göbekli
very good.
And it talks about parallel dimensions, and all these profound universal messages that I'd never expected to, you know, stuff we talk about on our show that's on Netflix now. I'm like, how did this slip through the cracks unless it was allowed? Because
it was very highbrow. It's not that easy to understand. It's subtitled from Turkish.
Right.
Only us UFO nerds and, you know, New Age geeks and metaphysical mystic types are going to be really into that.
Right.
For the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, your average Joe or Jane six pack, I don't know about the world, but America, they're not going to watch that.
Right.
What's this about? Turn on sports and football.
Right.
It's sad. I don't say that to be mean. It's just,
it's the
it
truth.
breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Because there's some really smart people I know, and then like football's on there, it's like, woo.
Right. It's like a power down. Exactly.
Sports.
They just power down, baby.
Exactly. And then, like, I go to family gatherings and stuff, and people can't help. It is a literal simulation when people are talking about the weather and sports and what their favorite Netflix series is and politics. And
oh boy, they love politics in America. Right. It's a contact sport.
It's another sport, right?
Right.
Exactly.
It's nonsense, and you know, but this brings up another point I wanted to mention. Now, I'm not going to mention the person who said this, but somebody in the SSP realm got up on stage in front of a large group of people and said, "You know, folks, all you got to do is go to the polls and vote for the right people, and we can have change." And I stood there listening to this, and my jaw just hit the floor and shattered.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, folks, I've been around the U.S. government all my life. You're only going to vote for another moron in charge. I just told you about the congressman who had, gee whiz, UAPs, and they shut him down. And if he keeps probing, they'll get rid of him. He's a congressman in 2 years. Oh, he mysteriously didn't win his next election. That's how it works. You're not going to vote anyone in. Politics, the U.S. government, anything, you're never going to get any disclosure or change or progressivism from those people. The military are designed to defend this country, and from any threats from outer space, and that's it. They're not in a position to disclose anything. That's for the U.S. government. See the runaround?
Right.
The U.S. government creates the task force, and and so it just goes round and round and round. You're not going to get anything. It has to come from the people.
Right.
And I thought that was very, very irresponsible to say that. And this is from somebody in the secret space program, a veteran. And I'm like, how can you be a veteran of what's going on out in space and say that?
That's
right.
I'll just say the name. I'll just say the name because I don't care. Randy Kramer.
Yeah,
Randy Kramer.
And it was
Randy. I like Randy. I think he has great, stories to tell. I appreciate it. But my God, that was. I mean, and then a lot of him and a lot of other people go, well, my commanding officer won't let me talk about that.
They're still
let me get something straight. I'm here with my face. A lot of people come on, interviews and they just have a blank. They don't want to show their face. What, you think technology is not going to figure out your voice? They've got technology that can do anything. So, getting up there and saying, well, I'm not allowed to talk with that. Ha, ha, ha. That's not funny. Right. Once you have once you have the balls to come on, show your face and talk about everything.
Right.
I can't stand this. Well, I could talk about this, but not that.
Right.
Ha, ha, ha. You kids aren't worthy of my information.
Apparently
it's too high level.
Well, they say
they
say it's because of NDAs, but
please, they're talking about the secret space program, and you're worried about your NDA. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Well,
so that ruins their credibility to me.
That's a great example of compartmentalization too, because he's only being told certain things, and he thinks everything he's being told is the truth. And if that was true, I would know about it. It's like that whole kind of thing. Right. And it's like, well, no, because it's compartmentalized. You're being told what they want you to know because that serves that compartment.
And then
I cannot fathom you're talking about a secret space program and fighting in space for corporations and everyone else, but I can't talk about this because my commanding officer said no.
Right.
That's no sense to me.
That's a joke.
Well, and there's the keywords, commanding officer. These people still have superiors that they answer to, and
tell them to tell their superiors to go jump on in a lake. It's ridiculous. We're talking about the survival of the human race,
right?
Yeah, and you're worried about what some jarhead commanding officer is telling you. You're worried about the wrong things,
right?
I'm not an SSP.
I mean,
I don't have memories. I don't have any of that stuff. But I've had my experiences, and I don't hold back because some senator called me up one night and said, "Don't talk about that." I don't do that. I never worked for the government, and I never worked for the military.
Right.
But even if you did, this ship has sailed, folks. I can't talk about this one thing. Why the hell not? You're talking about everything else, motherships and, Draco cement unions and corporate, and I provide ice cream for the secret space program out there. It's organic. You're talking about all that shit and you can't talk about this, the Aquatic People's Union for, freedom of the oceans. What the hell is so top secret about that? I'm going to vent. It needs to be said.
Right.
Yes. Thank you.
And and here's what I think: like most of the people, the masses, don't believe in this stuff anyway. Right. So, what's the difference if you share one bit of information next to the other that they already don't believe?
Right.
Oh, I can't talk about the frog people. No way.
That's too.
Why not?
Yeah.
Jesus,
to talk about it.
It's insane. It's just. I understand people are manipulated and messed with and alternate personalities and, God knows, psychotronic controls and the sky's the limit. I understand all that. But it's so strange to me when people come up, oh, I can talk about this, but no way I'm going to talk about the ice cream stuff. No way. Why not?
Right.
Some corporation doesn't want you to talk about that. Who cares?
Well, some people, maybe they were threatened. It's all circumstantial. We don't know. So we can't throw everybody under the same blanket, but I do understand what you're saying.
It's just strange to me,
Mhm.
Oh, I
Right.
can talk about this, but hell
Right.
no.
Right.
Right.
And a lot of that, those people are in those positions because they've been manipulated via their ego. And by saying that they can't say something that they're privy to, that boosts their
Yeah.
ego.
Ego loves that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never said that. No one's ever told me to withhold this. I've gotten some general warnings from people I respect, but I'm like, well, we're at the 11th hour.
Mm.
We really are. I mean, there's the countdown clock, 1 minute to midnight. We're at the 1 minute mark, the human race.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
By all accounts, everyone's watching us. What are they going to do? Are they going to really, are they going to, haul this ball over the goal line or not? And everyone's like, oh, well, I can't tell you my real name. And I can't do this and that. It's like, do you realize what's at stake?
Right.
Because in 20 years, when I'm 80, if we don't move this ball over the goal line in a meaningful way, I mean, the people, everyone around the earth, then we're going to succumb to a lot of us dying, a lot of us being chipped by Elon Musk and put in a cubicle with a computer, and everything else will be built by robots. And I mean, that's where we're headed.
It's full on slavery.
Yeah.
Full on. I mean, it's faster than people think.
Right. Well, because it
They worship
happens,
Elon Musk as if a demigod.
it happens before your eyes, and you don't see it until it's too late. And that's that's how it all happens. If you notice, like next thing you know, there's charging stations and electric cars and all this stuff. When did that happen? Like it just all of a sudden there.
It's the totalitarian tiptoe, as David Icke puts it.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm all for electric cars.
But let them charge themselves while they drive, because that's so easy to do, and you can easily charge the battery, keep the battery. You hook something up to your axle, and it can charge the battery while you drive. You don't even need a charging station. Like there's things like that they still keep you under their power, under their control, by making you go plug in your car.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to need 0 point or some type of fusion to meet the energy demands in 10 or 15 years in America. And now there's all these things in England. They announced a small town was doing a small paper, but they said, oh, we've got fusion up and running. It works. We're going to have it nailed within 10 years. And in America too, they're like, oh, the Navy and everything, we have breakthrough in fusion. Well, they've been using it for 50 years or more.
Right.
All you need is a strong magnetic field to contain it.
Well,
both technologies really, and it's torsion tensor physics. They're starting to let out bits of the truth, but everything across the board, people are talking in all this. For me personally, as I research this and given all the history, it's a case of every time it's a case of too little, too late.
Right.
The Allies almost lost World War II because it was a case of too little, too late. And with the Germans, they almost had their technology mature, but it was too little, too late. It's getting scary. I mean, that war could have ended everything.
Are you familiar with the Boeing B-21 Raider that was unveiled December 22nd? It's like the new stealth fighter bomber. But they say it's nuclear capable. What does that mean? And in the article it says nuclear capable or conventional. So they're telling you subtly, like, hey,
sort of, yeah. The Navy's cagey. They let out some patents and things here and there. Here's how to build a black triangle. Now everyone says you could, from the patent, you could see how it works. Sort of. They let out just enough information to whet your appetite, but not the big stuff.
Right. And then now Boeing is partnering with NASA, and they're creating the new next gen aircraft, the commercial airliners. I don't know if you saw that, but
that's going to be problematic. They're trying to get us off oil and coal eventually in the 25, 30 years. The Navy, the aircraft, if they say it's nuclear or conventional, that probably it's like a TR-3 black triangle. The early ones had a hydrogen type thruster system, so that's conventional. But then it had a plasma ring with a plasma accelerator on it, doing a 0 point to high voltage, and then 3 nodes are using torsion fields, monatomic gold and silver plasma and quartz crystals. That's to them, that's nuclear. They can call that nuclear. Is it technically nuclear? Depends who you talk to in the nuclear physics arena. Sort of. So they get away with saying, oh, this aircraft is conventional and there's a nuclear component. And what does that code for? And that means anti-gravitics or anti-gravity. What they do is they just take off with conventional ramjet or turbines. And then they switch to electrogravitics like the B-2 bomber,
right,
in low Earth orbit.
Right.
And I go from there. It's probably Moon and Mars capable if it has a plasma ring, like a TR-3B.
I think that even some of our conventional aircraft are retrofitted. Like I'm talking about like commercial airliners even possibly being retrofitted with this technology as well. And I had a very vivid dream one night where I was co-pilot of this airliner, and we had to make an emergency landing, and the pilot flipped on the anti-gravitics, let's say the nuclear capable technology, and we just descended. And I was like, I knew that was retrofitted into these planes. He's like, oh yeah, they all have it, and they're only allowed to use it under emergency orders. That was a dream, but I think something like that, I think that happens.
Well, they could. How do we get that to work? I mean, they just use conventional jet engines, and then in flight they could switch over and reduce throttle. It'll probably save a lot of fuel, and then in an emergency you could just glide to the ground very subtly and land. The problem with that is you give that to Lufthansa or United Airlines, they're going to wonder how the black box works. In other words, I was talking to my friend John Majorowski. He has a channel. And he said that, I lost my train of thought, but the satellites. And so when you order a satellite, a company orders a satellite, the satellite comes, but the black box comes from another corporation. It's a power source. And they say, well, what's in the black box that's going to power it for 25, 30 years? And they're like, that's classified.
Really?
Yeah. Put it in, launch it. You're done. No more questions. And so they've been, the Apollo 11 command module, some theorize that it had a black box in there to protect the command module and the LEM from micrometeorites, gamma radiation, and the Van Allen belt. So they have to have this electromagnetic bubble. Remember in NASA, Kurt Debus was number 2 under von Braun. He was a high voltage electrical plasma specialist.
Right.
What does that have to do with rockets?
Right. Well, everything, if you understand the electric universe. Yeah.
So they had a black box going to the moon. And a lot of people say we didn't go to the moon. I don't care, honestly, if we did or not. We probably went once, twice. And then Apollo went dark and classified and all that jazz. But, we've had these black boxes and other things, solid state, 0 point. They have the clear plastic brick, which I talk about in some funny stories. And, it can power a whole building or even a series of buildings from a solid state. It's clear, looks like, Lexan or something. That's really high-tech stuff. We probably have back-engineered that now. So hence the black boxes that can power a satellite for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now satellites go obsolete way before that time, but they just either they go up and retrieve the black box and then they send it into low Earth orbit to burn up. It's not hard. We've got a lot of gear in space. We've got space stations. We've got, service vans coming around going, oh, this satellite's going down. And they take the good technology out of it and save it for something else because it never goes bad.
Right. It's interesting too. You said that, some of these aircraft will take off with conventional methods, then they'll switch over. James Casbolt talked about in an old interview. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He talked about how he was sent to Mars. It was a regular typical conventional rocket launch from Peru. He said he had to be trained to be an astronaut. They shot him up into space, and once they were up there, they boarded a free energy craft and then took that to Mars. It's all part to maintain the,
It's all a show.
Right. It's the show.
That was the old days.
That was the old days.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Old days. Oh, now they,
Now
they
it's
just pick you up in your
room.
backyard. You can come with us. I had a dream. I went to the moon base one night. I was like, oh, that was lucid. And I was high as a kite. And doctors were examining me, and I was looking out these black windows. Where I want to see the moon and space and the earth. They're like, don't worry about it. It's out there, but you can't see through the windows. That was weird. Everyone's had all these weird dreams. It's very possible that most of us have been out in space. Our consciousness has been out there. They borrowed it for a while. Oh, fix the toilet, Mr. Warner. Okay, plumber. On the moon base, and it's not very fun. And then they put me. So we all might have been doing this, that, or the other. I had another dream. I was in the Air Force, with the 1960s uniform on, with a typewriter. They're like, "Oh, you're a writer. Type these reports up." And I had stacks of reports. And I'm like, this sucks. I thought being on the moon or Mars would be more fun. No, you don't get to do the fun stuff. Type these up and shut up. So I wonder about all that. I woke up and I told my wife, I was like, wow, I was a typist.
Yeah.
It was really boring work. But they need personnel to do mundane jobs. I wonder if everyone is taken at one point.
They need, who was it? Mary Beaver said they need accountants. They need everybody. Right. So thank you so much for joining us today, man. This has been a lot of fun. We covered everything. I really appreciate you sharing your time with us. And do you want to let people know how they can find you and where they can find your books?
Yeah, you can link my website on below the interview. That's the easiest way. And I have the link for the letter I wrote.
Can you can you just say your website out loud for the audio listeners?
Yeah, it's John W. Warner IV, author.com.
Right. And then if they want, they can follow you on Twitter also.
Yeah, I post some crazy stuff on Twitter. I don't expect any kind of miracles on there. I'll probably at some point just shut it down and just leave it.
Right.
It's designed to extract information and not really be any kind of meaningful.
Sure.
There's a little bit, a few people that are interesting.
Yeah.
But
well, thanks for joining us. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We love you all. Don't forget, if you want to come hang out, grab a ticket. The link is below, journeytotruthcon.com. Maybe there'll be some intelligence agencies there. Maybe not.
Should be one or two.
Right.
Free of charge.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, we hope to see you there. And if you can't make it, live stream tickets are available for $99. So take advantage of that. We love you all. Have a great evening. And until next time, good night.
Good night,
guys. All right. Thanks.
There was a CIA director named William Colby who in the 1980s said, we'll know our disinformation campaigns are successful when everything the American people believe is fake.
When we realize how powerful we are when we set our intentions and we realize that we aren't just this, we are just these multi-dimensional light beings, and time is an illusion, and it's everything's a perception. And you can go forward and backwards and embody it and just pop out and go and do this work. We can do amazing things when we set the right intentions to do it.
And I said, this is us on this plane. That's what this is. We're going to the moon. And he said, this thing is a lot older than you think it is. And we've been going to the moon a long time. But I wrote on it, I knew that we went to the moon. And so I always knew there was a base on the moon from a young age.
And our DNA is a complex recording system of the history of the entire universe, the history, of everything, that not just this timeline that we know, but multiple timelines of reality.
There are a total of 9 different categories of planets in the universe. We people on Earth, we are living on a category 1 planet, like elementary school students. And the Theobans, they are living on a category 9 planet, like college professors. So they have been really guiding us throughout history.
Telcom let us know that this facility under the Sandia Mountain is considered an information station for interstellar travelers coming to the planet. They tell us that their facility was retrofitted into the ancient tunnel system that already existed.
And as far as the bending the space-time continuum, I've had something like that happen. And what seemed like about a 5-minute encounter has been 4.5 hours of missing time. And I was completely conscious. And when you're dealing with a type 3, type 4, type 5 civilizations that can work with the different coexisting timelines, all bets are off, man.
You know, every time we have Bigfoot activity out there, we're having ETs and orbs and stuff like that. We have a lot of this stuff documented. As a matter of fact, I'm a member of 3 different teams, and I work with people from all over the country out in the field. And we actually have documented a portal, something that we consider to be a portal opening. And we sent 2 of our team members inside of it. And
Really?
It disappeared and then came back out.
I would suggest that we take it one step further and say humanity has never known who we are. We've always been in the thought control matrix. And one step further, perhaps we could say that we're in a consciously controlled state of hypnosis. In other words, are the thought control matrix creators constantly bombarding us with frequencies that keep us from being telepathic, that keep us from remembering who we are? And the thought control matrix was set up, and we have never known our potential, our power, our beauty, our incredible connection.
It makes no sense at all. There is no reason for it other than the programming that we've received for generations, because it's all about order. It's all about listen to your elders, listen to the teachers, listen to the adults, listen. And what that does is it dims the light of the child, and it makes them feel like they don't have a voice. And why that's designed that way by the dark side, and that's in the system, is so that they grow up and they just listen to, and they do what they're told, and they're good little boys and good little girls, and they lose their sense of self. They lose their north, their true north.
Yeah.
So many adults are walking around in this world, they don't know who they are.
So the planet itself is now beginning to split. It's beginning to divide again into a higher vibrational Earth and a lower vibrational Earth. And the race of man is dividing with it. And we're becoming less and less aware of one another. And over time, what will happen, and I don't know how long this will be, one world will have all higher vibrational beings on it, and the other one will all be third dimensional beings, and we will not perceive each other anymore.